Professor Beverley Raphael. I'm Professor of Psychological Medicine at the Australian National University within the medical school, and I'm also Chair of the Australian Child and Adolescent Trauma, Loss and Grief Network at the ANU. I'm going to talk about preparedness for families and children and the key issues that are really important in this time of disasters and other concerns. When we're talking for parents and children, I think it's a challenge for parents and how they will handle it with their little children, older children, and giving priority to something like this when there are so many other things that are demanding time and interest. Quite often we don't want to mention things like bushfires or other disasters. We feel if we don't mention them, they might go away. Nevertheless, we know that in Australia this year, particularly in the southern states, we are facing a very high risk fire season, and governments in the ACT, nationally and across the states and territories elsewhere, are all making preparedness plans. And there are two things about that. One is knowing what the plan is for your area where you live, and the second thing is having a plan of your own. We know those things are something which take a little bit of time and thought and talking together as a family and deciding what you do in the event of a disaster, such as a bushfire. And the second thing is knowing what the resources are, which you know if you know the plan of your area. There's a national initiative which says the overarching themes for bushfire preparedness should be prepare, act and survive. And so we're going to be talking about the preparing and how it would inform what you do to act. And that's the sort of thing that helps everyone get through such things better. So it's a very useful thing for every family to have a family plan. And you can put it together sitting down around the dinner table or wherever and focus on what are the critical things you'd need for a family plan. And one is knowing how you'd get a warning if there was something coming and what you'd do. We know ABC local radio is going to provide lots of that warning, and in some states and territories there are options about people being texted or contacted via their phones. A second thing is knowing what you would do in such circumstances, and the circumstances might call upon you to evacuate from where you are, from your home or workplace, and there are key issues that come up with that. First of all, when is it safe and when do you go? And the second thing is how and where do you go? And planning and just talking about that immediately puts you on the front foot because you've thought about it ahead of time. And we know from all the research in the field, thinking about it ahead of time, having had a plan and thought about what you would do makes a huge difference to how people manage, how they handle it psychologically, but also how they get through and how they do survive. Those things thought about ahead are worth every few minutes you put in ahead of time. Now, there are special things about having a family plan. A family plan usually involves working out those key things, what you do, but it also involves having some key resources that you could take with you when you go. Having a backpack, something that's light. And in it you'd need to have basic things like contact lists, a torch with batteries, a mobile portable radio, perhaps your phone with one of those new self-winding devices that you can wind up and charge at your mobile phone, and some water, food bars and protective clothing in the event of a bushfire. Things that won't burn easily and might protect you should you be in a more difficult position. The water is very critical because it's a very hot time when these things come. A list of the contact points is important because we know that being separated from your family members, kids and parents being separated, husbands and wives, anyone, creates a whole lot of extra worry and stress and can have an impact both in the emergency and subsequently. So it's really important that you think about that ahead of time. We know schools are well set up to do things in those settings, but we also need to feel that families understand that they know what their school would do where their kids are and what the processes would be for contact afterwards in the event of an emergency evacuation under the school's command from there. So those are basic things. Some people have other essentials that they want to take with them. This isn't taking the family treasures. This is the things that might be critical, like your qualifications from a strange country, for example. There are odd things like that. Maybe some treasured thing. You have to be prepared to go because if you're asked to go, it's that governments and others consider it's a matter of life and death. That's a hard thing for us to take on board, and it's a very hard thing to explain to young children. So probably in the first place, you need to talk about it in a gentle way. And it's always helpful to talk to children, particularly young children, in a way which explains something simply, but where you're in close contact and you're showing affection and making them feel secure at that time. If they get a message from you in a secure and positive way, they'll understand and trust what they have to do at the time and be more likely to remember it and see it as something that's part of what the family would do. So saying, if the fires get bad, because the children will have seen all this on television, we've got a plan, and this is what Mummy and Daddy will do, this is what Mummy will do or Daddy will do, and this is how we're going to get through. So you mustn't worry about it. If Mummy and Daddy say to do it, this is what we'll do. And we'll put your favourite toy in this bag so we're ready to take him if we need to go. We'll make sure we've got the cat, whatever. These are the things that are right for your family. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing this. You need to do it, and perhaps a few times a week when it's a non-time, to come back and talk about it for no more than a few minutes, so that it's on the agenda for people should something bad happen, but it doesn't take over your life. It's a little sideline that you're prepared, and we do prepare for a lot of other things in life, so it's really just adding this to the range of things. We're prepared to go on holidays. We do similar packing up. We arrange for the cat to go into care or for someone to look after it. So there are preparedness things that this fits with, and sitting it in line with that can be very helpful. For young children, of course, for those who've been through anything like this, as with the Canberra bushfires or elsewhere, it can be a bit scary, particularly when you see some of the images and hear some of the frightening things that people whisper about or show on television. So in those circumstances, it's also important to recognise that this might be scary, but we're a strong family, we're going to get through this, and even when we're scared, we can do things together because we're brave, we're courageous, and we're with you, we're all together. And they're the sorts of things that protect the child's well-being, a younger child particularly, in this time. When children are older, they need to be much more actively engaged in this process, in the planning of it, in a more direct way. We know that preparedness is important in a psychological sense, and the sorts of things I've talked about are part of helping families get their practical act together, but it's also working out, if you've been through tough times like a fire or other disaster, how you handle the fears that might be rising up inside you at the time. And there's a high five we're suggesting that people think about. The first bit of that is knowing what's available, knowing the practical things you have to do, getting those in hand. The second thing is making sure you connect with your family and others, and with others who can back you up, and how you know how to contact them. The third thing is knowing your strengths, remembering your courage that got you through the last time, and tuning into that, and recognising that fear's tough, but it also helps you do the right thing. And don't give in to the helpless feelings because you're where you are, because you were courageous and strong in other times. The fourth one is knowing what you have to do, and even practicing it. Let's have a fun evacuation to see how it works. And the fifth thing is look after your life. And that fifth thing's really important. This doesn't have to take over your life, but it's something you can have neatly done, just like you have lots of other little tasks neatly done, ready to go if you need to. It only takes a few minutes, perhaps 5 minutes a day, to do something like that.